finally made it to the Big Ten portion of the season where you get to see some elite matchups. The Big Ten West continues to struggle, and the Big Ten East has built anticipation up until this point. We knew the second half would be really fun, and Penn State and Ohio State get things started. These are two teams that have playoff aspirations, and one of them could see those go away after this weekend. And Penn State is a team that is hoping to pull off an upset, but beating a team like Ohio State requires a lot of focus, a sound game, and you have to be able to play your best because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. And if Ohio State is able to do what they've done to almost everybody else, then Penn State's in for a long night. We'll talk about matchups and keys later, but at Penn State, it all starts with this offense. I think that this offense has shown at times it can be extremely explosive. There are also times where you look at even the yards per play, not really an overall offense that scares a ton of people because I don't think many people know who you have in terms of explosive playmakers. The passing attack specifically doesn't really have a guy that is an elite wide receiver. You have a lot of guys that are solid college players, but I don't know if you necessarily have that player that can step up. That doesn't mean that they can't play at a high level, but that is the biggest concern coming out of Penn State and coming out of Happy Valley for a lot of the media. And this would be a great chance to prove that you are better than what people think. And Drew Aller is one of the players that can step up at quarterback. He can distribute the ball to his playmakers. Again, you don't need NFL talent to win football games at the college level. Obviously, it helps. It helps a ton, but Penn State can get the job done with the guys they have, and they have plenty of talented players. Again, these guys aren't scrubs. It's not that we're saying they're bad players. It's just that they are not what you'll see on the other side of the football. And when you look at the talent, nobody's going to say that Penn State's wide receivers are better. That doesn't necessarily mean that Penn State's offense can't be better because right now I think you've seen a little bit more consistency from Penn State than you have from Ohio State. And Drew Aller is a big reason why. You also look at the rushing. Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton are doing exactly what we expected them to do. I think that this is a great tandem in the backfield and one that could help carry this team. On the defensive side of the ball, you are fortunate to have the amount of talent that you do for Penn State because when you're facing an offense like Ohio State, now there are some injuries that we'll talk about in a little bit, but you need the amount of talent that you have to be able to slow down a team like Ohio State because Ohio State recruits at a high level. They get certain players to come in that can step up right away as freshmen and test your defense. A guy like Kalen King will have his hands full, and we'll dive more into the detail about that later. But when you look at this defense, extremely explosive, creates a lot of havoc on the opposing offense. And when you're looking at what this team could do, you're looking at a team that, like I said, has the talent to slow teams down, has the talent to slow a team like Ohio State down. And when you look at their numbers, it's easy to see why you could be excited about Penn State's chances in this game. Ohio State, on the other hand, has had some up and down times. And I think that the Notre Dame game raised some concerns about the potential future of this program, but I think so far they've responded well in the last two games. You look at what they did to Maryland and Purdue. Now, obviously, Maryland and Purdue are not the same as Notre Dame, but you still have, I think, a good showing from a team that is still building some momentum, still trying to get healthy. I think there are questions about what Travion Henderson can do, what Emeka Ibuka can do. There are a number of players that are dealing with some injuries, and whether or not they can get back on the field could determine a lot about how good this team can be. Because Marvin Harrison obviously is doing a great job. He is just doing exactly what we expected him to do, and he's going against great competition. He will go against another potential first round pick in Kalen King this weekend, and that's going to be a big factor in how this game turns out. I think Kyle McCord is the biggest X factor in this game because his ability to distribute the ball to his playmakers, especially if Egbuka is not able to go. Guys like Julian Fleming, Carnell Tate, you have a number of other players, Cade Stover, that could step up. And you have plenty of talent. It's just the difference between that and being able to win is you can get that talent to play at a high level. And so far, they've done a good job for the most part, but you need to find a way. Penn State is going to try to take away Marvin Harrison and dare everybody else to beat them. So that will be something to keep an eye on. Tommy Eichenberg is another player on the defensive side of the ball that has led the way. This is a defense that is much better than what we saw last year. We obviously saw some great flashes in 2022, but this is the first time we're seeing this unit play really well as a whole. And I think that plays a huge role in stopping what should be a really fun Penn State offense as well. If you're able to slow down this rushing attack, if you're able to make Drew Aller question some of his decisions. I think that Ohio State is the more explosive group overall. But if you're able to be disruptive and take away what Penn State wants to do, which is obviously established to run, I think that Ohio State is in good hands. Honestly, you could go position by position and you'd find a matchup that you really like. The first one that we'll talk about, Olaf Fashanu against Jack Sawyer. I think there's a lot of questions about Penn State's offensive line, and we know what Ohio State's defensive line is capable of doing. We've seen that in the past. And this is a big time statement game for both sides. If one team is able to play really well, that makes a statement that they're different than what we expected. I think that there's still another level that both Penn State's offensive line and Ohio State's defensive line can reach, and we will see if they can hit that. I think Chop Robinson is another exciting player, but for Penn State's defensive line, that is a defensive line that can wreak havoc on Ohio State. Could play a big role in slowing down this passing attack. And Ohio State's offensive line has also left something to be desired. So far, they have shown at times that they've struggled, and a defense like Penn State's could give them a lot of problems. We've talked about another matchup already, Kalen King versus Marvin Harrison Jr. These are two guys that have first round potential. Probably will hear their names called in the first round in next year's draft. That will be a huge matchup. I don't think that they'll ask King to always do things one on one against Marvin Harrison because even though King's talented, Marvin Harrison is so good that it doesn't matter who's covering him, he's going to make some catches. So whether they use some brackets, use different coverages, try to switch things up on Kyle McCord. The biggest thing is trying to get Kyle McCord to second guess his decision because when you're looking at Marvin Harrison, you know if you have one-on-one matchup, you can probably throw the ball up and be successful. Finding ways as a defense as a whole to be able to slow him down probably plays a bigger role than what Kalen King will do by himself against Marvin Harrison. Nicholas Singleton, we talked about. I think he could play a huge role. And then I think the quarterbacks really is what it comes down to. These are the two X factors of this game. How they're able to move the football down the field really determines how successful each side is. And I think Drew Aller is a phenomenally talented player, someone who has a bright future at Penn State. And Kyle McCord, I think, is just starting to get his footing. If they're able to both hit their strides in this game, we're looking for an all-time classic. And when it comes to those guys, they will determine how balanced these offenses are. And for Penn State, finding balance will be the key. I think that they have to find a way to not only run the football, but throw it as well. Ohio State is going to be very aggressive under Jim Knowles. They're going to try to run after Drew Aller and try to stop this rushing attack. If you're able to find a passing attack that can complement that rushing attack, then you're in good hands. Wreaking havoc on defense is also a key. If you're able to slow down this offense because you're getting after quarterback, you're getting hits on Kyle McCord, you're knocking balls down, you name it, anything to frustrate Kyle McCord in this offense will be the key. And then we already talked about this a little bit, but containing Marvin Harrison Jr. is the biggest key, whether that's Kalen King or by scheme, you name it. Manny Diaz has his hands full, but I think that if you're going to trust someone to find a strategy to take away a talent like Marvin Harrison Jr., it is Manny Diaz. And with the amount of talent that this team has, you feel pretty good about your chances. For Ohio State, protecting Kyle McCord will be the biggest thing. Obviously, we have some questions about this offensive line. And when you face a defensive line like Penn State's, you need to step up in a big way. This isn't just your average game anymore. This is a defense that I think I'll say this. One of the biggest things that I think helped Ohio State was facing Notre Dame because Notre Dame's defense provided a ton of challenges. And now you have a game under your belt where you know what the struggle is like against really good competition. And you're going to face another one in Penn State. If you're able to handle that, it's because you've learned something from the Notre Dame game. Stopping the run, like we said, is going to be a huge factor as well. And then not non-Marvin Harrison Jr. contributors, whether it's Julian Fleming, if Emeka Egbuka comes back, if Trevion Henderson is there, Ryan Williams, you have so many options. It's not that Marvin Harrison Jr. can't do it. It's that you need depth. You need some other guys to step up and make big plays. And a lot of that starts with the quarterbacks being able to get them football, but somebody needs to step up because Marvin Harrison Jr. can't do everything by himself. These quarterbacks are so fun, honestly, because they have so much talent, and I think that they're just scraping the surface of what they can do. It's just you need to find a way to be consistent. When you look at the numbers, they're not overly impressive. And I think that Kyle McCord's numbers look more impressive than Drew Aller's. But when you watch the film, it's kind of the opposite. Drew Aller is the more impressive quarterback right now, and Kyle McCord is still finding his way. That being said, there's no time to find your footing. There's no time to say, give me a minute. You got to figure it out. This is a Big Ten East matchup that has a lot of weight in the not only the Big Ten race for the championship, but the national championship as well. Ohio State obviously lost some talent coming into this year, and Kyle McCord is a player who many expect to make big plays, whether he wants to or not. You won the job, and now it's your opportunity to show that you can win a big game. Same thing for Drew Aller. He's going to be around next year. He's going to have to show that he can win the big games. And if he's able to do that, Penn State looks really good, not only this year, but in next year's game or next year's season as well. Picking this game is interesting because I think Ohio State still has a supreme amount of talent and it's loaded. That being said, I like a lot of the matchups that favor Penn State. I think there are a lot of certain matchups that go in Penn State's favor, and I want to lean Penn State. I know it's Ohio State's conference for the most part outside of Michigan. I think that this game has been predominantly Ohio State's way, so there's definitely something to be said about that. But I think that as a team as a whole, Penn State feels a little bit more put together. I'm going to lean Penn State in this one. I'm very curious what everybody else thinks. But when it comes down to it, Penn State to me is the more complete team, and that's what gets them the win this weekend.